Hello, Chubby and Coos fans. It is me, Candace, owner of Chubby and Coos Mid-City Bookshop in New Orleans, back for another author event, and I am super excited because today we are talking about this book, High Times in the Low Parliament. And I think y'all really like it. It's a novella. You can get through it very quickly, and you will if you read it. And so today we have Kelly Robson, who is the author of this book, and she is an award-winning Canadian short fiction writer. Her time travel adventure, God's Monsters and the Lucky Peach, won the 2019 Aurora Award and was a finalist for the Hugo, the Nebula, the Theodore Sturgeon, and the Locus Awards, which was amazing. And while her novelette, A Human Stain, won the Nebula Award in 2018, she is also a winner of the Prix Aurora and has been a finalist for World Fantasy, Astounding, and Sunburst Awards. Kelly grew up in the foothills of the Canadian Rockies and as a teenager was crowned princess of the Hinton Bighorn Rodeo, which is amazing. I love that so much. And she consults as a creative futurist for organizations such as UNICEF and the Suncor Energy Foundation. And she and her wife live in downtown Toronto. And she will be in conversation today with Nicola Griffith, who is a dual UK-US citizen living in Seattle and the author of 7 award-winning novels, including Hild and Ammonite. And her shorter work has appeared in Nature, New Scientist, New York Times, and others. She is the founder and co-host of Criplet and holds a PhD from Anglia Ruskin University and enjoys a ferocious bout of wheelchair boxing, which was also amazing. And she wrote a book called Spear, which I know a lot of you read, and we had her recently to talk about that. So I'm really excited to have both of these authors today to discuss High Times and Low Parliament. Welcome, Kelly and Nicola. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi.
Hi. It's good to be here.
Excellent.
And I'm going to excuse myself and listen to this conversation.
Hey.
Hey. So I'm going to talk to Kelly about her book. And I have to say, it's the first time I have ever read a fantastical, alternate, historical, political satire with a protagonist, Lana, who as a perfectly ordinary young woman, she's a real happy-go-lucky lesbian. She would much rather get wasted and dally with a pretty woman than save the world. And yet, spoiler alert, because it's a book, she is called upon at one point to try save the world anyway. Many things strike me about this book. It's the political satire, the underlying sort of climate change metaphors. It's almost our world, but with fairies. There's humor and class relations. There's so much more. But the one thing that I was really struck by that wasn't alluded to at all in the jacket copy or reviews was that Lana's world has no men in it. So let's start with that. Why did you make that choice?
It's fun to think about, right? It's fun to think about what would the world look like if there were 0 cis men. It's not a world that I want to live in because that would mean there would be no BTS. And I do not want to live in a world that doesn't have BTS in it because that's just not worth contemplating. But so when you're drafting a novel, when you're drafting anything, you're doing it for yourself at first. And this was just a fun thing that I was playing around with. And then I realized when I was at the end of the first draft that, nothing is more boring than talking about the backstory, your world building that you have built up. So, there are men in the world somewhere. not in this book. They're not in, as you say, they're not in Lana's world. They're not in England. They're not really in
You
Southern
have
Europe at
frozen.
all.
I don't know if you have frozen for other people, but I
have I?
can't hear anything that you're saying.
Oh.
Anybody else?
Not frozen for Candace.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Must just be me. Sorry.
Yeah. So hopefully I will unfreeze for Nicola. Candace can help out with that probably. But yeah, what should we do? Should I go on to answer the question? If Nicola can't hear me, that's no fun.
Go ahead and answer the question, and I will see. It may be Nicola's internet, which is what it looks like it is, because now Nicola's frozen for me, but you're fine.
Yeah, no, Nicola's frozen for me too.
Okay, so I think it may be her internet, but you can go ahead and answer her question, and I will see what I can do.
Yeah, so I'm writing a sequel, and the sequel will answer where the men are. But what was interesting was when I had finished drafting this, I was thinking, was I just being self-indulgent with, putting 0 men in this story? And then I thought a couple of things. And first of all was a vast tradition in science fiction of taking a gender completely out of a book. And one that really gets my goat is Arthur C. Clarke's Childhood's End, which is about all the children in the world ascending to a higher plane of existence and becoming energy monsters or something like that. But there's 0 women in it, 0 women. So maybe this is just me getting back at Arthur C. Clarke. But when I was revising the book, I thought, am I just being too self-indulgent? And I tried seeing what it would look like if I put men into it and realized that my central kind of theme of, or my kind of, one of the concerns that I'm working with in this book is people sometimes politically just really, really suck. And that's people of all genders. Human beings can just be really, really bad sometimes. And if I put men into this world, it might look as though I was saying that men suck and that women, because a woman is going to solve this problem at the end of the book, women are the answer. And that is not at all how I feel. Women can be just as dumb as men. But so it just turned out that politically it really worked to not have men in this book because of the message that I was going for. It's just, and it's fun. It's fun to think about. So yeah, that's that's the answer to the question there.
Okay, I think Nicola's back, so this is perfect timing. Nicola.
Hi. I have had to shut my computer down and switch to my iPad. So hopefully, fingers crossed, this will work. Hi.
It's working good now.
Good. Did you get to hear any of my answer at all?
I'm so sorry. No, I didn't hear a word.
Yeah. Well, the short version is I went back to revise it and I thought, am I just being self-indulgent? What if I put men in? And it broke the book to put men in because what I was saying is politically human beings suck. And if I put men in, then I might be saying that men suck. But if I take men out of the book, then it's just humans suck politically. Humans are just really bad at politics. And so it just worked to not have men in it. But I am writing a sequel and we'll see where the men are because there's a very specific place where men are and things that men are cis men are doing. Basically in this world, everyone's queer or trans. And that's kind of fun, right?
Well, it's very cool. So I was just wondering if not having men in this, certainly in this part of the world of this book, did that make it easier to be humorous? Did it
I don't know. I don't know if it made it easier to be funny. It made it easier to be political, judgmental about politics. Yeah.
Why do you think that is, though? I mean,
yeah, I have no idea. I don't know. I mean, it made all of the women really free, maybe,
Mm.
with no, it would have been a much bigger reach story-wise to have a book that is set 250 years after the Great Fire of London, where there are men and women, and men and women have equal power and volition in the world. So yeah, it just made the characters a lot more able to be free of artificial gender constraints.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So why do you suppose it wasn't mentioned on the book? Was that deliberate choice?
That's interesting. Yeah, it was interesting. There are interesting things that aren't mentioned in like the cover copy. One thing that isn't mentioned that I keep saying online is this is a stoner buddy comedy. Like it is literally, absolutely follows the pattern of
Mhm.
the stoner buddy comedy. So I'm talking about Key and Peele's Keanu. We're talking about Zoolander. Talking about Harold and Kumar's movies, and we're also talking about Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, which is a stoner buddy comedy. It really is.
Right.
Like if Tom Stoppard can do it, so can I. That's just that permission right there. But I find that when the publisher is talking about the book or putting out cover copy, like the idea of the fact that my two protagonists are stoners, it's like they don't touch that. They don't want to go there, and I don't know if that's because they don't want to lose library sales to like schools, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Because fantasy is still seen by a lot of people as things that are, only fit for teenagers, which is ridiculous, and we all know that. It
Yeah.
makes me so mad.
I
So that is one thing. Yeah, and the whole there being no men in it, it's kind of a little bit inconsequential. It's kind of a building detail that just doesn't really need to be gotten into.
Yeah.
There's
But
one man in it, and that man is Jesus. The icons of Jesus that are still hanging around.
Yes,
The
the
hanging
hanging man.
men.
And then there was
Yes.
the mention of the evil Henrys.
Yes, the
But
old
yeah,
Henry.
I wanna focus now. I mean, one of the things about not having men in it is that it gives Lana full permission, basically, to be a player. Oh, she's
Mm.
not even a player because that
Mm.
implies a certain cynicism, but she's
Totally.
definitely a lover.
She is,
Not a
absolutely.
fighter. And
Absolutely.
I really like Lana, and I just want to read. There's actually like a couple of sentences about 2/3 of the way through the book that really kind of encapsulate her for me. And it's fair to say that Lana had never worked hard to understand anything before. Why should she? Life was good, girls were pretty, ale tasty, and work light. And like, what a wonderful life.
It sounds good, doesn't it? Isn't it
Yeah.
beautiful? I love it when characters have everything and still have problems.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That makes me really happy. And I also really like in the vast majority of the things that I write, people are not physically aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
They're not fighters. And that's just something about me. Like I'm not that kind of person myself. So in that way, yeah.
But I think Lana is a bit like you and me in that we both enjoy, a glass of wine and some of the finer things of life. But given that this is like an alt history satire with fairies, it can't possibly be what other people might label autofiction or autobiographical fiction. But so I want to hear about the ways in which Lana is and is not like you. Actually, that's not true. What I'm really trying to get at is that tricky line between an author's character
Mm-hmm.
and an author. So, for example, I think our book characters are very much like the characters we encounter in our dreams. I think they're
Mm.
not us, but they come from us. So
We
tell
understand
me
them
tell
on a
me
really
about.
visible level. Yeah. Lana, well, like Lana, I'm not physically aggressive. I couldn't punch my way out of a out of a paper doghouse. And I never have been. I mean, even when I was a kid, like, just it's not my thing. Uh, but then you also take little tidbits of wonderful information from your friends. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I have a friend who is currently getting famous on uh, Instagram under the handle Weather Daddy. So they are a very, very hot butch lesbian, and have recently started doing daily weather reports on Instagram, and beautiful selfies, and flirting with people. Very wholesome, but also a little horny, is how she describes herself, or they describe themselves. Um, and so my friend Weather Daddy had told me like many, many months ago, that for some people, and this is not my experience, but for them and for other people as well, the they're horny all the time, and that they want to have sex almost constantly. And if they don't get enough sex, it's almost like, missing a meal. They start getting really hungry for it, and it's a visceral, like, thing. And they don't need to have an emotional connection with other people to want to have sex with them, which is completely not my experience. I have to be in love with someone to have sex with them. So I took that little tidbit of information, like what I never would have thought about before, because that would, I never even thought about that some people just, have to have sex regularly, or they feel deprived. And gave that to Lana. So Lana is that kind of person. She's just, she goes throughout the world looking for pleasure and for sensual input. She loves beautiful things. She loves beautiful pens, and she loves flirting, and she loves to drink beer and get high, and she walks through the world loving it. And in that way, she's like me. I very much walk through the world loving it, not in a sexual way, perhaps, as much as she does. So yeah. I mean,
So
like,
how is she not like you, apart from sex all the time, or
oh my
not
God.
needing sex all the time?
Okay, well, let me tell you one more thing in the way she is like me, though. She loves to just jump in without plans. And Alex and my partner Alex, teases me about that all the time. Like, don't make plans, just go, just do it. So that's another way that Lana is very much like me. How is Lana not like me? Besides the sex thing, she can be pretty dumb. I hope I'm not that dumb all the time, except for the impulsiveness.
You
But
don't seem as not hapless is the wrong word, but you don't seem as just let life take me where I'm going to go. You seem to have a bit more of a plan.
Yeah, no, I've got a lot more anxiety. Yeah, anxiety fueled. Right, a lot of writers are fueled by anxiety, right?
Mm-hmm. So have you had any experience of? I'm looking at your oeuvre, and I'm not thinking that anyone would have the opportunity to say, well, that's clearly thinly disguised autobiographical fiction, because time travel, fairies, eco-fiction, it's not very autobiographical.
I did manage to write, after a long time of trying to figure out how I would approach it, did manage to figure out a story that I published several years ago in Jonathan Strahan's The Book of Dragons, which is semi-autobiographical. It's set in my hometown in 1986. It has a lot of my opinions about that town and my information about ways that I survived living in that town and the risks that young women went through living there in that town. So that is my most deeply autobiographical story. Yeah, I like that one. It was felt very freeing to finally figure out a way to draw on my personal history in a fantasy story. So I like to say that story about a dragon chasing a school bus, which is basically the movie Speed. It speaks to my very soul.
Okay. So now I actually want to talk about the humorous aspects of your novel, the comedicness, the comedy. Because you may or may not agree, but it seems to me that comedy and genre fiction, it seems to be getting rarer. It's certainly wholly absent from historical fiction, and yours, although it's an alternate history, it's still set in a kind of past.
Sure.
And maybe it's just a function of the authors I read, but it's so rare to see humor written by a woman. So where does the humor in this book, where does this book come from? So what does it owe, if anything, to authors, I don't know, like Douglas Adams or Terry Pratchett or whoever else may have influenced it?
So there is, a lot of writers do dabble in comedic science fiction fantasy, but as you say, I haven't seen much of it in the last decade. I don't know if that's because the world seems like it's getting more precarious, or one of the reasons may be that it seems like only cis men can get away with it. Some of my favorite comedic science fiction is from John Kessel. His book Corrupting Dr. Nice is a science fiction novel that I think about constantly, and whenever I write time travel, I'm always in the back of my head, what would John Kessel do? What would John Kessel do? It is hilarious. It is about time travel is just very easy in this book. And one of the things they do with time travel is they go and they bring back historical personages to just come and live in the world. And so that comes up with a lot of hijinks. Another one that I really love is from the late 80s. Kim Stanley Robinson, very serious science fiction writer, incredibly serious man, great writer, love him. Published a novel called, it's actually a series of novellas called Escape from Captivity, which is actually a stoner buddy comedy. It's about two extreme like mountain climbers who befriend a Yeti, and it's fun. It's fun. Walter John Williams has a series about a space burglar, which is hilarious, that I love. But where are the women writing it? Connie Willis writes a lot of humorous stuff.
It's true.
And she's really good at it. She's amazing at it, and she is a huge influence on me. I can't really think of any other ones. And
well,
one of the reasons
it's
risky.
Yeah,
risky.
well, that's what I was gonna say. I think one of the reasons that women don't write it is that we've been accused of writing such light stuff, and our stuff is not important, and only the manly men's work counts. And I wonder how much of our work is constrained by all this trying not to fit into the stereotypes. It is. I hate to think how much work is lost or hasn't been given to the world because of people trying to avoid being accused of X or Y, or no pun intended there, but yeah.
No, it's true, right?
Mhm.
Because there is nothing better than a funny science fiction novel,
Mhm.
or fantasy novel, or any kind of
Or
novel. But
historical
humors
novel.
or
When was the
historical
last time
novel.
you read a historical novel with fun in it? I mean,
Mm-mm,
humor, jokes.
mm-mm, I haven't. I never have.
The only books
Um,
I can think of actually are Patrick O'Brien's Master and Commander, and the whole series. There's a
yes,
lot of humor in those books. I
high
love
freaking
those.
hilarious.
Yes.
Love them, love
Yeah.
them, love them. I constantly think one of the things that he pulls constantly is absolutely freaking hilarious. He'd be having this very intense scene, and then suddenly the perspective will just turn, and you will realize that Maturin has been there the entire time doing something wacky, like swimming behind the lifeboat because he doesn't want to get um, sunburned or something. And he starts making these wry comments. It's so funny. He's hilarious. He was absolutely brilliant. Yes, I love those books too.
Mm.
So that is, yeah, so that's a good example of humor
But you
in
see,
historical fiction.
those books are they're definitely historical fiction. They're basically
Mhm.
Jane Austen on a
They're
budget,
Jane
right?
Austen, yeah,
Um,
on the waves.
so historical fiction, and they're funny, and there's
Yep.
parts of it that honestly are very fantastical. So,
Yeah, it might as well be a spaceship, basically. A
yeah,
boat.
and
Yeah.
so your book is alt history or fantastical history or historical fantasy, and it has fairies in it,
Yeah.
and it's political. So if you had to describe your book as a genre, what would you pick? What would you
Stoner
call
buddy comedy.
Stoner buddy comedy? Set
Stoner
in
lesbian
an
stoner
imaginary
buddy
time.
comedy with fairies about Brexit.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean that's what it is, absolutely a stoner buddy comedy. As I said before. It follows the pattern.
Mm-hmm.
The sequel follows the pattern. I'll just let you know that at the beginning of every sequel to a stoner buddy comedy, the stoner buddies are apart and they have to come back again together again.
Oh
So
no.
yeah.
Oh no. So,
Exactly.
okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Is sad to think of these two good friends who have come together at the end, not being together at the
Yes, but
beginning of
there's
the next
more
book.
than two. There are
There
more than
are.
two. So
Spoilers.
talk to me about that.
I love a three-person love group. I love
Mm-hmm.
and this is another thing where Lana is not worth me. I couldn't possibly. I'm not a good enough communicator to be poly. Like you have to communicate on this like huge level. And I just could not possibly do that. But yeah, at spoilers, at the end we have a threesome, a romantic threesome, and that's just a reaction to the end of every stoner buddy comedy where the stoners go to their separate female partners and have prevailed and are now happy. But I would prefer them to be together.
Mm-hmm.
I would
I
love to
think
see my my stoners be together. Yeah.
we can get to this. I want to follow up on the notion of this sequel in a minute, but you talking about how things usually are.
Mm.
Usually in a stoner buddy comedy, that they are separated. I want to look at something else that your book does that's different from the usual, which is that a lot of fantasies, and because this is a kind of fantasy, it's a stoner buddy comedy with fantastic
Yeah.
elements and varies.
Yeah.
They're usually about kind of noble people, that they're very important. The hero is a man or a group
Yeah.
of men, and
And they're the chosen one.
they're the chosen one, and it's all about their bloodline. They're the secret lost heir, and blah blah blah. But your book isn't like that. It's just these people are ordinary folks. They are not chosen. They are not special. Nope. Or perhaps they will turn out to be. I don't know. I mean, of course, everybody's special.
Everybody's special.
But they're just ordinary
folks. More special.
They have jobs.
Yep, jobs.
So I would love to hear about your notions of class in this book and other places, or not. We can change the subject a bit.
Yeah, no, that was a gur about class. We like to pretend in North America that we don't have class.
Sorry, excuse me.
And it's ridiculous. Of course we do. One of my very good friends happens to be from kind of like reluctantly, she is from upper class Canada, like royalty. And like the things that she tells me about, what that is like is just weird. So I guess I like most of my main characters to be pretty ordinary people. I think. I'm just casting my mind back. Have I ever done anybody who is super special in any particular way? Guess not. It drives me a bit crazy because in North America, if you can't see it, if I can't recognize that my friend, comes from a different social class than I do, and that everything that she's telling me about it is completely beyond anything I've ever heard about in my entire life, we can't get rid of it, right? Like it's insidious. And I know it's insidious in England in a way that, but at least you can see it.
Oh, it's overt. In England, it's overt. All you have to do is open your mouth and people know exactly who you are.
Right.
It's like that.
They can pin you down to a location. They can tell you how much your parents made.
Yeah. And how subservient your daddy is or is not. Oh, they can tell. But one of my advantages is that I have a very confused accent because my dad was from London, my mum's from Yorkshire, and I've lived in this country for 34 years.
Yeah.
So I go to the UK and they say, "Oh, are you from Canada, love?" No.
Well, about 50 miles away from it.
Yeah.
One of I got to meet. So speaking of accent, got to meet Priya Sharma, fantastic writer who lives in Liverpool, and she grew up in Manchester, lived in Chester for a while, then moved to Liverpool when she was in her 20s, and has been there her entire life now. And even she doesn't have she doesn't have a Liverpool or Manchester accent. Like it's a mush of some kind. So yeah, that's weird, right? My dad came from a very impoverished family, and he and his brothers and sisters, 6 of them, had nothing. But he put himself through law school and was a small town lawyer. So I grew up the daughter of one of the more wealthy or seemingly wealthy men in town, where my mom, after she divorced my dad, was on welfare. So for me, class is slippery because you can fall into a pit so quickly. A class pit. Yeah, I don't know. It's a sticky question.
It
But
is, and it's a tricky thing to deal with too, I think, in books, because some people they don't want to be reminded of it.
yeah, and they don't know, it's not, in North America anyway, it's not something that we think about a lot. Yeah, we don't really believe in it.
Yeah. And so,
Um,
speaking of verboten topics,
mm,
I found that politics is kind of the third rail of polite US book discussion. But High Times it's literally about politics.
yeah, it's about polarization.
Yeah, so I think maybe for a couple of minutes, I don't know what the time is, we have some time, we should go there. I mean,
Yeah.
on first read, it's a satire of bureaucracy and Brexit in particular, as you say. But I think, well, I think it might be more than that. But why don't you talk a bit about what you set out to do?
So it has bothered me my entire life that a big political decision like Brexit, like who's going to be president of the United States, like who's going to be, for that matter, who's going to have the majority in Parliament in Canada, can rest on such a needle's edge.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's actually true or if people are just putting rose-colored glasses on when they say that, decades ago in politics, there was a lot more room for compromise, and that people taking hard, radical lines to the right and being divisive is something that has only come up in the last 30 years or so, and that it's a new, very successful political strategy. And it really bothers me. So I took a line from Monty Python and decided that in my fairy parliament, a 2/3 majority is required. In the case of simple majority, in the case of purely internal affairs, and a 2/3 majority otherwise, because that would require people to take a softer approach to decisions, a softer, a more conciliatory, a more slightly more looking for some consensus with the other side. So that's kind of my I don't know if it would work, and I know there are no easy answers to these questions, but I like that idea. I don't think we do anything by majority rules.
Mm-hmm.
It's just life is just too complicated for that.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no. When you have politicians stirring up dissent to get 50% of the people against the other 50% of the people, you don't really have politics anymore. You just have a game. You have a game of votes, and it is not, nobody is winning that. Everyone's losing. Everyone.
Right now, I think absolutely you're right. Particularly in those countries like the UK and Canada and the US, where it's such a binary. It's like there's this side or this side.
Mm-hmm.
And then each side has a bleeding edge that's pushing the center further and further apart. There is no room for the center anymore. So one of the things that your book does is it fixes that very unusually. And I don't want to give a spoiler, but let's talk about the role of art.
The fairies.
Yeah. Do you think well, first of all, there's fairies, right? So can fairies fix us? Could they? They couldn't fix things in a book. But do you think us as writers, as artists, do you think we have a role in this stuff?
I absolutely do. I mean, we're playing with possibilities, right? we are every time we pick up a pen, we're showing the world as it could be if we follow a certain extrapolation trail. And I would love to think that makes the world a better place. I know that stories make the world a better place. And I think that Douglas Adams made the world a better place with his wonderful, ridiculous, funny, priceless books.
Mm-hmm.
I know Terry Pratchett did. I think that humor has a better chance of saving the world than dystopia does. I think dystopia we've had a lot of them. We've seen a lot of them. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't write dystopia at all, because there are people in the world who have lived through dystopias for generations. I'm talking about Indigenous people. And they have a lot of really good things to say about dystopias, and a lot of Indigenous writers and science fiction and fantasy have written a lot of really great stuff lately. I would say everyone else shut the fuck up about dystopias, and maybe try writing some humor and see what comes out of that, because decades of dystopias haven't taught us anything.
So you think changing the world would come by the feelings people get from art? Like
the feelings people get from art, and the illustrations of how ridiculous things can get, and how ridiculous solutions can sometimes show us possibilities that we wouldn't have thought of in any other circumstance. Possibly.
So I wrote my whole PhD thesis on this, so stop me if I get too deep. So I'll keep it really brief. But I definitely, deliberately set out to change the world with what I write. It's a conscious decision. And the way I do it is by trying to change the world one reader at a time. And the way I try to do that is to change their essential standpoint, like their perspective.
Right.
It
to
usually
show them
doesn't.
Another
Yeah,
world,
show them to put my characters inside them, so that for a little while they are the character. They see the world through the character's eyes and smell it through they feel the world through the character's senses, and therefore they understand their decisions from that perspective. I'm not quite sure where I'm going with this, but
it's interesting because I've just finished reading Spear, as you know, a few days ago. And when you talk about class, there's some really interesting things about class in there, where main character Paratier, sorry, Paratier, at the end of the book is in a farmhouse with Lancelot and with Nimue, and they are not. Paratier is not getting treated like a normal girl from the valley as she would have been. She has become a lord, and she has to deal with that. And it's hard, because in order to make the farmer comfortable around her, she has to act like what she looks like, because the farmer is scared of her otherwise, doesn't know what to expect from her. It's uncanny.
It's too confusing.
It's confusing, and it's uncanny to him that somebody who looks like Paratier does would treat him like a normal human being. which is something that I have never seen before in historical fiction, even though we do often have characters moving between classes. I don't know why I brought that up, but it's a political stance that I like
Oh yeah,
a lot.
But I like readers, and I think your readers will have felt it too, to feel all this class stuff and political stuff without someone banging them on the head with the bladder saying, oh, no, we're talking about politics. Bang, bang, bang.
But politics is ridiculous. And you have to laugh at politics.
It's comedy,
so
yeah.
It's
which
comedy.
actually, we do have a question which is connected to the political stuff, that the humor and politics we were talking about earlier, and it's from that Kelly made a point about humor lobbing unexpected perspective changes at the reader. Do you think that's one of the reasons humor in genre seems scarce? Fear of taking readers out of a particular comfort zone?
I think a lot of it is as you mentioned earlier, Nicola, fear of not being seen as being writing serious stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Also, another reason might be just writing comedy is really hard. It's really hard.
Mm.
It is so much easier to kill people on a page than to make them laugh. But also, as you say, the person who asked the question said, fear of taking readers out of a particular comfort zone, but fear of not being funny, because not everybody has the same sense of humor. Like, I think humor is really risky. Pure, like, comedy is really risky. Humor, not so much. Like, you can have humor in a very, very black, dark book. Comedy is risky because some people just don't have a sense of humor at all. Other people, there's just so many different types of senses of humor that you really risk just not a book just really not being successful when it's comedy.
I think that's why, for me, when I write humor, it's not a joke, it's not deliberate humor. It's just, to me, a kind of comedic juxtaposition. So that some people will find it funny and others might not even notice. But if they don't notice, they haven't been hit with something they don't understand.
Right.
It's not a gap in their reading in a particular way.
Because Odd has a lot of situations that are quite awkward and quite funny. Mm-hmm. And part of that is because she is such a force in the world, right? Like, she is able to walk into a room and take control of it, pretty much no matter what.
Yeah, she owns her space.
Yeah, which is cool.
She owns everybody else's space. That's what she does. It's not what Lana does. Lana
slips in there.
She slips in and whispers gently in the space's ear, I think, and slides her. Well, never mind. We won't go there. So, speaking of Lana, you mentioned earlier that there may be more. Lana and Bug Bite and
so started writing it quite quickly after I delivered High Times to my editor. Ellen Datlow, by the way, is my editor. She's so great.
She's good.
She's really good. She's such a good editor and a wonderful person. And then, so that was at the end of 2021, and 2020, my 2022 just like blew up. Personally, like, a lot of really crazy things happened and some tragic things, and my day job went crazy, etc., etc., etc. So it's not done. I was hoping that it would be done a long time ago, but I can tell you that it is called Down and Out, at the mighty assembly, and everyone is back, though not together at the beginning. And there are witches. Some people are really not happy with fairy rule over humankind, and some of those people who are not happy are witches. We will see where the men are, and we will meet the wild hunt.
All right. Do you have a working title? Oh, yes, you did. You've already told me the working title.
Yeah, Down and Out at the Mighty Assembly. And the Mighty Assembly, by the way, is in Elsinore. It's in Elsinore.
Of course it is.
So I'm taking the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern thing to heart.
So Danish boys. All right, then. Okay. So what else are you working on?
Yeah, working on short stories. I have a short story coming out in Jonathan Strawn's book of, I don't even know if it's been announced yet. Oh, well, Book of Witches. Jonathan Strawn's got a Book of Witches coming out. It's going to be a beautiful illustrated hardcover. Got a story in that. It is called In a Cabin in a Wood. And the cabin and the wood are not where you think they're going to be.
All right.
And other than that, yeah, short stories. I'm working on short stories. And I'm working on novels. I'm working on a novel-length standalone sequel to God's Monsters and Lucky Peach.
Oh, good. I've been wondering where we were going to go from there.
Open up a vein and just... I've been trying so hard to write this sequel. I am bound and determined. I think I've got the screws tightened properly for this one. So yeah.
Cool. So how has your reading experience been the last couple of years? I've talked to all sorts of people, and during the pandemic, some people are like, oh, I've read everything, it's been great. And some people are like, I can't read right now. So where are you on that spectrum?
I'm always reading fiction and nonfiction at the same time. Some of the best books that I have read in the last little while is Lauren Groff's Matrix. Have you read that?
I have not. I kind of got mad at the idea.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Oh, why?
Yeah, it's partly because I'm working in a kind of similar vein, and also a couple of people whose taste I admire didn't enjoy it very much, and I just thought, I'm just not gonna mess with that.
It's nothing like your work. Like it is nothing like your work, and it is not. I'd say it's not as it's a small book. It's very small, and it's I would, since you are working on that kind of thing, definitely stay away from it, because who wants somebody else's stuff in their head when they're working on something like that? I enjoyed it, but it is nothing like your stuff at all. It's not that deep. But it's fun. What else? So for humor, there's a book that is recently out from I don't know what's this guy's name. I wrote them down because you always have to tip if you're doing a interview. People will always ask you what you've been reading and what you've been enjoying. Write it down, because otherwise you will never ever remember. So Glitterati by Oliver K. Longmead, who I think is English. Funny, really funny. It's basically Zoolander, science fiction Zoolander. Very ridiculous and really fun. For far future science fiction, yeah, it's pretty crazy. Spear, of course, I really love Spear. The OT3, spoilers.
Not really. I personally don't care about spoilers, and everybody knows about.
Well, okay, all right. So it's about Pelator. It's about Percival, who is a woman, which is awesome. We love to see that, and we love to see a gender bent Arthurian story. Well, one of the things that I really loved about it, and this is because I love the Arthurian legends, but I hate the betrayal of Arthur. by Guinevere and Lancelot.
It makes no sense. It makes no sense.
It makes no sense. And it really bugs me because Guinevere should be better than that. Lancelot should be better than that. But
And
in
so
Nicola's
they are.
book, and so they are. And in Nicola's book, they are a threesome, and I love a threesome. So I hope we get to meet them again. And the other thing is C.S.E. Cooney's Saint Death's Daughter, which I loved. I really loved. Bravura world building, really lush prose. Too lush for some people, but not for me.
Mm-hmm.
And a really fun, great, interesting look at a necromancer who is a really compassionate, wonderful, femme person, which makes me happy too.
No, compassionate femme necromancer. That sounds different.
Yeah, it's very different. Yeah,
so
C.S.E. Cooney. C.S.E. Cooney.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yes, and the another thing to plug about it is that the main character's love interest is a they. Is a person, a non-binary person. She's lovely, and I love them.
So
and I can't wait for the sequel.
Cool. I see that we are 1 minute from the end here. I don't know if we have more questions, but is there anything you want to talk about briefly before our nice Candace comes and kicks us off?
What? I just want to be excellent to each other. Let's not just be excellent to each other. We've all been through a lot of shit in the last couple of years. Yeah.
I hear you.
Yep. From the great stoner buddies, Bill and Ted, that advice.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I love ending on this because Bill and Ted give excellent advice. So I do love this advice, and I do love a good love triangle that ends in polyamory. So I appreciate both of you for all of the things and for the humor, because I love that discussion about humor as well, because you're right. I don't think I see it. I don't see it in historical fiction almost ever. So so thank y'all so much for coming and talking and doing this event. I am so appreciative of it, and I know that the folks watching are appreciative of it as well. And of course, buy the book. I forgot to say that at the beginning, but please buy the book. There is a button at the bottom of the screen that says buy the book on it. So,
buy this book.
Yes. And wait, I have the cover here too, because it's such a cool cover. I love it. I love the artwork.
It's a good cover, isn't it? I'm really happy with it. It makes me super happy.
Who did the art?
The same person who did the cover for C.S.E. Cooney's Saint
Kate Forrester.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's a goodie. I like it. Makes me very happy.
It is a goodie.
I'm so lucky with covers.
You are lucky with covers. All of your covers are pretty good.
They're excellent. Yeah.
So yes, buy the book. It's only $15. It is a short novella, so please go ahead and buy it and watch us here for more author events, because we're always having them. So thank y'all so much for this tonight. Yep, and see everyone next time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.